All right. Hello, everybody. Yes, we're doing like an actual face stream this time. And no, I did not plan on that. That's why I'm like slightly unshaven. But I was just like, you know what? It would feel really nice to do a face stream for the first time in a while. And it really is not the optimal time to do a face stream because like I've been slightly sick the last couple days. Um, so yeah, so I look kind of disheveled and stuff. But I don't know. I felt like doing a face stream. Yeah, and before we move on, I wanted to show off something funny. Um, so I was like messing around with like the NVIDIA broadcast stuff, and there's like one that like makes you do eye contact. And, like I have like very dramatic lighting on right now, so it doesn't look that good, but it's just like spice. No, like just it works much better in like regular lighting conditions, but it's so cursed. I see so many futures. All right, that's enough of that. Anyways, anyways, onto the stream. So I've been like slightly crashing out the last couple days for like various reasons. But one of the things I'm thinking about is like, though I just did a redesign of Brane Script, I'm still taking too long to do Brane Script. Like, it has been a month since I last redesigned it, and I would say that I am about halfway towards getting anything at all compiled with Brane Script 3.0 was that version. Um, I think I would have needed another roughly 2 weeks to a month of work to actually have like a from the scripting language itself to compiled code. Like I think it would have taken that much longer to actually get there. Um, which I very much liked the design that I of where I was going with the language, but again, I was halfway to the MVP of that version of that language after a month of work. And I have something like 10 months now until my like the engine is fully functional deadline, meaning that to get that scripting language to the point that version of the scripting language to a point where it's like fully usable, I'd be using about half of my time budget purely on getting just the language working, which is the most important piece. But then, like, that doesn't give us a lot of time for networking or any of, like, if we wanted to do any engine rendering stuff, trying to get, like, quest build working, all of that stuff, we wouldn't have very much time for. Now, do I think that all of those things individually won't take very much time? Yes, I've gotten a fully functioning multiplayer networking framework built from scratch and ported it into Unity in a month. Like, that is something I have done before. However, oh yeah, and it didn't crash once. But um, it's just always nice to have more time to be able to do things. And I keep making the joke that I could make a C clone in 2 weeks. Like, oh man, if I was just making a C clone, it would be so easy to just make a clone of C. Like, it would be much worse, but I could make a clone of C in 2 weeks, and that would be easy. Um, and last night, like, I was working on the scripting language more, and it was like more design decisions that I haven't like fully figured out, and like I'm just sitting here like, it's gonna be like another 3 months until I can actually use this in the engine, and I really do want to just use it in the engine. So we're just gonna try to make a C clone in 2 weeks and just see if the C clone is like it probably will just be like the best solution for us right now. And also, with the other thing to consider is like I eventually want like other people using this engine, possibly like everyone using this engine. So throwing at them like a very unfamiliar language probably isn't the best thing to get people to adopt your language. In fact, the best way to get people to adopt your language is, as much as I hate to say it, is to make something like JavaScript where it mirrors the human condition, is the way I'll put that. Where the language allows itself to be incorrect, to mold itself to the way people usually work, even if that's not how code should be written. I'm of the opinion of like the computer is better at computing than a human, so the human should mold themselves to a computer while programming. A lot of people would prefer the computer mold itself to them, and I do think C is, compared to what I was coding, C is a lot closer to the way the human brain thinks. At least the way coders' brains have been conditioned to think. I feel like functional programming stuff could be like, actually no, functional programming is the closer way to like the way data works and flows through systems. But when it comes to like coding, C is what we're used to. So anyway. See, will you have Boolean types or all just integers and strings? We'll have Booleans. They'll just be like integers behind the scenes, but we will do like there is an official Boolean type. One thing that I still want to keep is that this will be a very interoperable language. Making it a C clone is going to make it a lot more interoperable than the functional programming route I was going to go. But yeah, so this version of the language is going to be a lot more learnable. It's going to it's going to be initially more ergonomic to use. It's going to have a lot less static validation, so a lot more. You will need to debug this version of the language. Oh wait, I forgot to change my Twitch stream name. We are not implementing a dynamically statically typed language. Designing a MVP C clone. We'll throw JIT compiled in there for clickbait value. There we go. Okay. To begin with, what about C compatibility? Will people be able to use external libraries, or does that go out of the scope of the engine? You mean like external C libraries? No. So when I say C clone, I don't mean cloning the language of C. Maybe C like is a better way to describe this. It's a C-like language, not like an actual straight-up clone of C. And like taking in external binaries would be an absolute nightmare for sandboxing. So no external libraries. Now there will be library linking, I think, of some sort, and that is yet to be determined in the document that we're about to start on right now. But no, Brane Script is only going to be compatible with Brane Script and anything the host environment exposes to it. At least for the beginning, unless people port libraries to Brane Script. Anyway, okay, let's see. First up, let's set some goals. Not golds. Goals. 1. Fast execution. 2. Fast execution. How do I want to word this? Implementation of the language done fast. Okay, I'm joking. One of my goals right now is not fast execution of the people actually using the language. Though that would be nice. That's not currently a goal. Right now, it's to have a language that people can use, not necessarily use fast. Go use Ruby or something. But okay, so our goals are the language itself will be fast to execute. The second goal is that the implementation of the language will be done quickly. Required features. The required features of this language are native types, which are ints, floats, pointers, and we will have to do pointers because this is a C-like, and we will have to do a design section on how we're going to actually handle pointers. Because there is a chance we'll need to do an in-place memory kind of mapping whenever we bind a memory page to convert all the pointers contained within a memory page into a format that works for the yes, I am real, unfortunately. I'm also slightly sick, so unoptimized real. About using something like C++ references, I'm pretty sure those are just pointers underneath. The interface is like a normal variable. See, on one hand, yes. On the other hand, absolute simplicity. Just expose them as what they actually are, pointers. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to expose them as what they actually are. And then, to be honest, pointers aren't hard. They're not difficult. Everybody's scared of them. They're not hard. They're like a programming 101 level concept. Memory management, the architecture of that is hard. Using a pointer, that is not hard. Yeah, that's what I'll say on that. Um, Now, like, having like a different syntax for member access patterns, that we can solve that. Of like, we'll just use the dot member access syntax like for pointers as well, same way that is MPV the video player or something else? What is MVP? Oh, what does MVP mean? No, MVP means minimum viable product. That's what JavaScript is. Should make an object-oriented. No. No. Not everything you just said there is wrong, Cade. Everything. It's okay. I know this guy IRL, so it's fine if I insult him. So, don't worry, rest of chat. You're safe. Cade, watch yourself. Yeah, the only difference between the dot and the arrow pointer is pretty much the. Yeah. And like I do like that the arrow syntax is like very clear that like this is a pointer, but at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. The only time you really need to differentiate it is if you're in situations where pointers themselves can have where pointers themselves can have members. So in the case of a smart pointer in C++, smart pointers like unique have a like .get method, and that method is on the pointer itself, whereas the inner contained type in the pointer could also have a get method. So you'd want to do arrow and then get instead of pointer get, not pointer get, period get, to like differentiate between like, am I explicitly using the pointer here or am I explicitly using the contained value here? But yeah, so we're gonna go with ints, and this is like I8, U8, I16, U16, and I'm going to use Rust formatting for integer types just because I think that makes the most logical sense. Like, what is an integer? What is an int? What is a long? What is a double? This is madness. Just say unsigned 32-bit integer. Easy. We're gonna have these. We're gonna have floats. I'm gonna throw an etc. on that. Pointers. Pointers are pointers. And we will have typed pointers and I guess also untyped pointers. And then, okay, let's see, what else? Are there any other native, like, native to the compiler themselves types that we need to worry about? We have integers, we have floats, we have booleans, which are technically integers. Um, which will be an alias for an I8. Is that a game? Not sure what that is. Boole. No, we're not gonna have boole. We're gonna have boolean. Integers, floats, pointers, booleans. Do we really need anything else? Ah, wait. Well, we also need our slices. So wide pointer. But then again, aren't slices a structure? Alias for struct with pointer and length. Ooh, this is true. So we're gonna have. Actually, I'm gonna call this not native types, but alias types, because they're secretly handled by these behind the scenes. And we're going to have a char, which here's the thing. We need to be able to support Unicode, which means characters, unless you want null as a type. I do not want null as a type. I do not want null as a type. So we're getting there. We're going to have object types. And those object types, one of them is going to be a discriminated union. So I am actually going to do Rust style enums, but that's because from a runtime perspective, if you're not doing any fancy pattern matching stuff, which we can add in pattern matching stuff later, I am explicitly going to forbid myself from doing that at the start. We're just going to have like switch statements. And then you can also switch on an int. So yeah, so we have characters, which are, that was a lightning strike. So characters could be an alias of unsigned 8-bit integer, but here's the thing. Unicode has a lot larger than 128 bits or 256 bits. So you can't store every single Unicode character in like a 8-bit integer. You need a 32-bit integer to be able to store every single possible string data type. Or not string data type, but possible UTF-8 character. And yeah, the correct way to handle this right now is to have it be an alias of U32. That is... I hate that so much. It's 4 times larger than it needs to be. Because what if we just had UTF-8 encoding and... fun fact, this is actually why you can't directly index into strings in Rust. It's because UTF-8 encoding, characters have variable sizes. So the only way you can get characters from a string in Rust is to use an iterator and then iterate over every single character, because it basically live parses the string and reconstructs. Like, okay, this is a single bit character. This is a multi-bit character. This is a single bit character. That's so much more data we're going to be passing around. But we're not going to be using JSON. So, it's fine, I think, maybe. Did you have 2 distinct characters? Here's the way that we can... The way... The way that I'll let myself, like, sleep at night is we're gonna say that that we will refactor this later. Strings in the future will be constructed of UTF-8 encoded strings, but to start out, they're going to be UTF-32 encoded strings. And we'll write the API in such a way that it can be rewritten to be U32, But for the moment, no. The benefit of U32 is that people would be able to directly index strings and work with them how they would expect to. But yeah. So now let's do object types. Oh, okay. We'll also say string alias of slice of char pointer. You could encode it as a UTF-8 until a non-UTF-8 character is encoded, and then could you re-encode the string as a higher size? So here's the thing. We're making a C clone, so there's a lot less encapsulation than usual. So the string, like for example, this string here is an alias of a native array. So object types. We're gonna have two object types. Do I want to do tuples? Tuples are so nice. If we're doing discriminated unions, then tuples are really, really nice. Do I want to do anonymous structs too? My intermediate representation already supports anonymous structures. So, well, let's say structures. Did I spell that correctly? Yes. Literally, the way that I have to remember this is by going anonymous in my brain, and that is the only way. Um, that's the only way I can remember that. Anonymous. Here, 1 second. I need to respond to something. But yeah, my current solution for not having a second monitor is I just have a hand-me-down MacBook running over here off to the side that I can like Discord and read chat from. Why have multiple monitors when you could have multiple computers? Also, seems like a lot of people got a big screen beyond 2 fairly recently. It's been cool. There's a bunch of like face tracking demos that are popping up, and they all look like really good. Well, not face tracking, eye tracking. All right, so we have structures, tuples, Where is YouTube Studio? I want to force my stream not to force end. No, I don't want to use the app. Go to this one, then disable auto stop. There we go. No, it does support. Okay. Oh, am I back online? Looks like I'm back online. Alright, is this back online? Okay, we're back online. Cool. Oh, thank goodness. No! No, take me back! Let me see chat. There we go. How does eye tracking even work on a VR headset? So it has like super tiny cameras like right underneath your eyes. To E. So this is the headset, and this is like as small as like an actual Cyberpunk headset. And face tracking. Yeah, sorry about my internet. It's been going out a lot recently. It's kind of crazy. But stream doesn't look like it ended, so we're good. We're good. Let me just refresh. Okay, yeah. Why am I not seeing any pictures of? There we go. This isn't one with face tracking. Show me one of the ones with face tracking. Yeah, so this is their face tracking camera right here. Not face tracking, eye tracking. It doesn't have like mouth tracking. You can like make your own add-ons. This like little Squidward nose pointed at your mouth, and then you have like you know, um, like a machine learning model that can look at that. But yeah, so this is like an infrared LED, just like sits right here underneath your eye, and then it can basically track where your eye is looking. And yeah, it's been looks like it's been working like fairly well. Yeah, there's eye track VR. There's I think Babel is like the lower half of your face version. Might be able to do might be able to do your eyes too. Okay. Alias. The style union with int with paired int for designating variant. Okay, and then the way that we rediscriminated unions is a switch statement, which is the way that I was doing stuff with the previous version of Brane. But yeah, previous version of Brane Script. Have you figured out how out at all how developers can distribute their worlds? Will there be a platform like Rec Room and VRChat or standalone binaries? So the way that I currently have it's currently planned is Brane is an open source framework. It's not necessarily a platform. I will be hosting my own servers. I will be providing my own servers for people to host their worlds on. However, you are able to grab the binaries yourself off of GitHub, host your own servers, and then run it yourself and just own the entire stack. So you can think of it very close to, like, I'm going after the WordPress model where it's an all-in-one tool to build the VR version of a website, which is a world. And you can either let me host that for you and pay me to do that, or you can just host it yourself. Peer-to-peer would be awesome, but there's a lot of benefits to having central servers. I'm kind of trying to build something that I think businesses would be able to build on top of, like something that's worth putting capital into. And peer-to-peer is generally buggy. It's hard to code for. It's basically a worse experience for all parties involved, except to some extent the game developers' wallets, because a lot of times it is a lot cheaper, and you can also have like a lot more anonymity. Is easier with peer-to-peer, but I do think centralized, more so federated, I think is the proper term. Servers is the better way to go with that sort of stuff. So sharing would be in the client when installing. They have to go through how many gigabyte to share, and you can turn it off if it becomes too consuming. Torrents are buggy. I was more so talking about peer-to-peer games, like peer-to-peer networking. I haven't messed around with the torrent too much outside of torrenting movies, but that's an example of like an extremely specific use case. Like sharing files is like, okay, we're sharing blobs of data, and this is the only thing we're doing. There's not really requirements for like syncing one specific version of things, or yeah. You probably could host servers through torrenting, but here's the thing, it's not business viable. I want to create something that both would be really good for the community of art VR, but also would be good for businesses. And centralized servers works for both of those. With the community side, I don't really buy into trustless systems. Like crypto and decentralization, all that stuff is founded on the assumption of like trust absolutely nobody at all. The thing is, the way that humans just work is every system at some point has to depend on trusting somebody at some level. So in my mind, it's fine if like you have one friend host the server and everybody trusts that friend. I don't need to decentralize it to the point that every single client is not trusting every single other client, and it's built with that assumption of zero trust in mind. Instead, it's like, here is the federated central server, and you'll trust that. That makes more sense to me. And when it comes to like sharing worlds um, and assets, worlds are not just they're not just static data. They're also going to have like server APIs on the back end. Like one of the really cool parts of Brane Script, one of the reasons I want to make it, and this is if you've seen Spacetime DB, they're actually using this exact method. Um, I've had the idea for longer than them. No, they're actually doing things, so I can't like pull the I had the idea. No, Spacetime DB does a very similar thing where they have WASM running server side, so you can have people upload their own code and it runs in a sandbox environment to validate like API calls and stuff. It's like trusted code. So at the core, like you can't just share the data of a world because there's also like the backend data of the world. Like if you want to have persistence in a world, that would be handled by the backend of the world, which is also stuff that I'm building out a stack for. Like this isn't my plan isn't like VR chat. My plan is something much cooler than VR chat. I think closer to Resonite, but more performant, and also not necessarily Resonite because Resonite is very like feels scattered when you play it. I want this to be more structured than that. Let's see. Okay, so do we need any more object types than raw structures, tuples, and discriminated unions? Do we need anything else? See, torrenting does check between multiple seeders for inconsistencies. I'm pretty sure on that level. That's the thing. That is inherently a trustless system. Um, but I I want to like have. I feel like the best system that will work is federated, where there is a source of truth, and it wouldn't be like blindly trusting, because like you do have a sandboxed environment on your PC. Um, when I say trust, I mean for what the data is. Like one of the core problems of like say NFTs in games is that yes, I have a NFT that is a certificate that I own something in a game. Now let's say the game servers go down. You have a certificate that you own something in something that doesn't exist. So in my mind, it doesn't matter if your ownership of a thing is stored on a blockchain or in a fallible server tied to a game. If those things aren't able to be transferred between like multiple things, and I don't want to enforce on developers the need for all of their things to be shared with all of the other things, because that just completely breaks game balance. It breaks game feel. It kills artisticness to be able to share things between worlds. Outside of like maybe user avatars, and that's why I want user avatars to be like a world decision if they want to allow user avatars or not, because sometimes you want to create a vibe, other times it's a social world where you want to let people be able to show those off. How much freedom do developers get when making their world? Yes, developers get absolute freedom. They get freedom above the users when creating their world. The developer may curate whatever experience they want for their users. That is the goal of the project. Is the developers are essentially the ruler of their specific space. In theory, could they make something that people would believe is a standalone game, or would it be obvious that this is built on Brane Engine? It probably would be obvious that it's built on Brane Engine, but the goal is that they would be able to build out a fully featured game inside of their world. That is the goal. So the things that would make it obvious that it is Brane is it would basically always have to still be multiplayer and like work for VR. Possibly would have to also be. I'm not current. I don't have defined plans for like a desktop native client or mobile clients or anything like that. That is like those are good to haves, but I'm not currently planning around them. So in that way, it would mold the games to like whatever paradigm of like the enforced. This is how you interact with the game. But I, my goal is like, can you build Half-Life Alyx inside of Brain Engine? I want the answer to be yes. And for what you're saying there with like world sharing using a peer-to-peer with centralized server, I don't want. I what I do think I will allow for is for people to pool server resources. So if some people have a cluster of apps, cluster of asset servers, they're able to manually share those with another group that they're like partnered with, to just cluster, like share resources basically. Can you build a TTRPG simulator? I want the answer to be yes. Yes, the answer is yes. Um, you should be able to do that. But for the actual like client, there's like multiple binaries in Brainish. There's multiple server binaries, and then there's a client binary. The client binary isn't going to have any ability to edit worlds, host worlds. It's just like a web browser, basically. The client is a web browser. So any amount of like peer-to-peer sharing of stuff that happens on the server binary side. I really want the average user brain to have to interact with as little fancy technology as possible, if that makes sense. I want it to be something that can work for a general audience. And then you switch on the developer features, and it completely changes. But for like the average user experience, it needs to be simple and usable. All right, I'm talking too much. Design time. So we have integers, floats, pointers, slices, Boolean characters, strings, structures, tuples, and discriminated unions. One of the issues with the server approach is who's going to run them. If you build a world, you need to host your own servers, or you need to pay somebody to host servers for you. Um, every single platform currently, aside from Resonite, is not profitable right now. And as a open source project currently, there is no way that like I would be able to host servers indefinitely for free the way VRChat's doing. And VRChat is bleeding money right now. So while peer-to-peer would solve the problem of needing host things, I really do think that centralized servers takes, and when I say centralized, I mean for one world they have centralized servers. Federated servers, I'm going to start using the term federated. If I say centralized again, smack me and replace it with federated. Federated servers is the route to go because the experience you can provide is significantly better, and that's the way the web works. The web is not peer-to-peer, the web is federated. I'm basically copying, I'm making web. Ugh. There's not a 0.0 that I can do without it being cringe. I'm making the web but VR. We're going to go with that. We're not going to say web 3.0. No, we're going to say web but XR. But who's going to host the servers initially? Me, a couple of servers, and then anybody who wants to make a world. There won't be free servers initially. And I think that is fine. if I make a world to show off Brane Engine, I will host those servers. If somebody is developing a world, they'll be able to run a local host instance of it. And I do think that I can do something where one person may be able to like host a server on their PC and then not punch it out to other people. It would be a form of peer to peer, but not really, because they're running two binaries on their machine. But because there would be no one joining, because there would be no host. That's the thing with this. I'm not building a platform. I'm building a I'm not building a platform in the sense that VR chat or Resonate. I'm not trying to replace VR chat or Resonate. I'm trying to make just an alternative paradigm. So I don't think if people need to host their servers, they will. So for a client, would you just enter the name of the server hosting a world or collection of worlds you want to join? Essentially, yes. That's how it works in the beginning. So in the beginning, it will... So in Minecraft, how you go in and you type in either the domain or the IP of a server. That's how it will work at the start. So there at some point, I do want to create like a world browser, like a web browser that you can and it will probably take the form of a world you use to jump to other worlds, and like you could even like theme that nicely. My initial idea is like a subway. You could also build a TARDIS that goes to different VR worlds, but initially it's going to be like word of mouth. Go to this domain. There's this cool world there. All right. Let's see. And then I think this is our entire list of every single feature we need, type-wise. Structures and no Brane, work with me here. No privacy labels explicitly at the beginning, so no public or private members. Then we need functions. And currently my intermediate representation works by accepting a structure and then returning a structure. I don't know if that's the way that I want to continue. And implicitly, it does do a little bit of optimizations over that. But I want this to be like fast as possible by default. Can you have functions inside a struct or just functional programming? So this version of we're making this a C-like. So not functional programming. This is not iterative. What parrot? Procedural programming, where you just tell the computer what to do and it does it. How would you search worlds? Initially, you wouldn't. But then eventually, like once there are worlds to be searched, I feel like first you get community moderated lists where like you just manually type in every single IP address into an index and then other people are able to search that. And then after that point, you figure out how to do essentially a web crawler, but for like a 3D space. So you figure out which worlds connect to what worlds are linked to others the most. But it is initially a community run index if you do have a search browser, but it's outside of the platform. It's an external API. And here's the thing: servers will be able to do external API calls, so you would be able to integrate an external API into worlds. So functional programming is a very specific thing. Functional programming means that previous values are completely immutable and there are no loops, and the only thing you can do is call functions. That is functional programming. Very, very much dumbed down. But yeah, object oriented is, yeah, where you have like contained units that are encapsulated and then they like send messages back and forth through member function calls. And then you have entity, the entity paradigm that have like Elixir has, which is essentially the end goal of object-oriented programming, or like the taken to the logical extreme of like you have entities sending messages between each other. See, sorry for being annoying. Don't worry about it. But how would world makers without the funds host the world host the world? Um, that's the thing. At first, they the answer is they don't. They would probably have to do something like similar to like if you want to host a Minecraft server with your friends, where you set up like LogMe and Hamachi or something and just like essentially LAN party it. But yeah, I don't have a solution to that currently. Now, if my hosting service that I will be setting up is successful enough, I might be able to offer a free tier, but that's a after profitability thing. I'm like trying to at this point avoid VC funding, and the only way that I would be able to afford hosting servers for free is if somebody is paying me to do that, and that's a venture capitalist, and I would have to sell them a portion of the company and lose control over some extent of the company. So wouldn't the only worlds on there be microtransaction heavy type worlds or heavy on advertisements? Possibly. My hope would be that most of them lean towards a subscription model, where, in my opinion, subscription models are the most ethical form of monetization. And if you do a subscription model right, you can still have people on your servers for free. But the hard truth about the like VR industry, isn't peer-to-peer more ethical? To an extent, yes. To an extent, yes. But the question you have to ask is if peer-to-peer is practical. In which case it's not as much. Peer-to-peer is very cool, but I don't think it's practical for the end vision I have for Brane Engine. I think there's there's a certain level of impracticality. Um, and at some point, like the VR industry does need to make money. At some point, if you're creating stuff, you will have to make money off of that to keep creating or fund it through your regular job. Um, my goal here isn't to like solve the economic problems of the world. It's to create um, just something that I think works the best that it can. It's not. It's not as practical because it's a lot less efficient. Um, and also like centralized things just kind of work a lot better, and there's a lot more work that goes into making a decentralized system. Like a significantly more complicated to make a peer-to-peer system. In a lot of ways. That is a good thing where like you're right. I don't have like a super snappy answer for exactly why not peer to peer. I do it's mostly like a vibe of like I don't want peer to peer multiplayer servers. I want centralized servers for at least like the runtime networking for asset hosting. Like if you're already running centralized networking servers, centralized asset hosting servers are also makes sense. I do need to come up with like an act. I need to resolve the vibe into an actual list of reasons at some point. So I think yes, that is something I do need to address at some point. And I'm gonna remember that. Okay, for functions. Um, Functions. So Brane, work with me here. We have functions. So I'll you can say all functions are defined at the module level. And yes. Give me a second. I do actually have a camera. Where is what you need to get? Mom cameo. He's hiding from the camera. Project, yes, the project is open source. All right, so all functions are going to be defined at the module level. There is so the way that I want to handle member functions is not to have them explicitly defined as member functions, but have it be functions can be called as member functions if their first argument is of the type of if their first argument we'll say implicitly be called as member functions with the first argument defining the self type. All right. These are like some very close lightning strikes. So this is how I'm going to handle member functions, and this will be like super easy to handle. And then do I want to have template types? Are you redoing the whole scripting language? At the moment, yes, that is what we're doing. So I haven't settled on what the actual language of the scripting language is going to look like. I have settled on what the virtual machine that runs it looks like, though. The virtual machine is pretty much done except for branching. So right now it's just like we're defining like the simplest possible version of the language right now, because the last version I got a month into it and then I'm like, this is going to take 3 more months to finish. And I currently have like I've set a hard deadline for myself to have the engine working next year. And I really do just need like a working scripting language at this point. I've spent years at this point like idling on trying to get the scripting language working. Like 3-ish years just trying to decide what the scripting language is going to be. So I'm just like cutting myself off and making a C clone. Because at the end of the day, if I build the virtual machine right, it can be upgraded. Instead of like, yeah, how much of the engine do you have implemented? I have asset streaming, some rendering, a fair bit of like an editor, custom shaders and whatnot. I do plan on rewriting the engine since it's been like 4 years since I built that part of the engine, though. And I'm a significantly better programmer now than back then. We're not using things like Lua, VR headsets on a mobile device. So, while Quest 3, where is my quest? Is it right there? Yeah. It's behind my screen, so I couldn't find it. So this is running a mobile phone processor, which means there's not a lot of CPU. And I'm like just scripting like micro optimization. Why is my hair being weird? Micro optimizations are kind of like my like I really really like optimizing things. And while Lua, especially LuaJet, can be very fast, you can get faster. And that's just kind of my goal is there are so many scripting languages out there, but none of them are ahead of time compile first. Wasm is the only thing that I would say is similar to what I'm trying to build right now, and Wasm doesn't fill my needs. So I'm making a different version of Wasm that can do what I needed to do. So extremely fast, because it's VR. We're performance bottlenecked for the vast majority of things we want to do. For most other games and all other systems, they don't have to worry about performance. They have to worry about making a good game. With VR, you need to worry about performance before you can even think about making a good game, because like most games run like crap. I don't want something that works. I want something that works the best it possibly can. And the language doesn't need to be fancy for that. The runtime needs to be fancy for that. So all functions defined on the module level, functions can implicitly be called as member functions with the first argument defining the self type. Functions do not have Then self args may autocast to pointers. And this will just be like a usability thing. So you don't have to implicitly like always do that all of the time. Okay. How do you even make a compiler? So no, we're not even doing Python. The language I'm using is Rust, and really all a compiler is some code that translates from text into a representation that the computer can understand. So my entire pipeline, what that looks like is you go from text to this is the current intermediate representation like this. So here's a list of like the lowest level operations that a computer can do. So you say like float add these two previous floating point values together, or I subtract. And this is all it can do. This is every single possible thing that the computer is capable of, and everything else is built out of these things, aside from branching, which I haven't put in here yet. And then we're able to reformat from this code here into we can just-in-time compile. That's what JIT stands for. JIT compile these instructions into actual machine code, and then we basically get a function pointer that we can call as fast. It's as efficient as code just directly as part of yeah, you basically turn it into the same format as your like native code is turned into. So it's literally the fastest it can possibly run. So using Rust to make assembly logic gates? No. So we use it to define a subset of assembly, but then we turn it into actual assembly. In fact, the thing below assembly. The thing can, like, if you inspect an executable file, it's just like a bunch of like rubbish that only a computer can understand. We're lowering all the way down to that level. The code itself is not running code. We turn it into self-running code, like a binary. Yeah. Technically, it's machine code. So x86 machine code. So it's the binary version of assembly code, basically, that does all this. We JIT compile it down all the way to this level. It is a compiler. This is correct. Just-in-time compiler, to be precise. Well, ahead of time optimization and then just-in-time compile. Then do I need anything else to find here? Now, here is where it gets hard, because for this to be usable, we do, I think, need some form of metaprogramming. Like, I don't see a way to get around the fact that at some level we do need, like, to be able to metaprogram. And what that means is At this point, mostly just templating. Template level metaprogramming. So no pre-validation like you would have with like traits or where clauses in C sharp. So it's just when you use the template, it tries to resolve that, and then if it fails, it doesn't work. Metaprogramming is when you program programming. Um, so if you've ever done like, here's an example. Like anytime you have angle braces on this, like this is a vector of a tuple string type. So the fact that we're able to say vector of a thing is because vector has this wildcard t that can be replaced with any type. Now Rust has a thing where when you do metaprogramming like this, you need to also define what you want T to be capable of, like what traits T needs to have. With C sharp, you also need to do that. With C++, which has templates, C does not have templates. With C sharp, C with yeah, with C++, you just try to use a template, and then if it's not valid, it doesn't compile. Um, void pointer is just a wild card. Um, with metaprogramming, it's like a known wildcard, so everything is still like fully statically typed. You're not doing type erasure, which is what void pointer is. You're doing, hey, slot this type into every single place where I define this type, and then, yeah. So no pre-validation. There's basically no pre-validation, just grammar replacement. Sorry, responding to some other stuff. I just realized I didn't put any music. It's just silence. So, Let's see, there's Facecam. I'm going to not flash my YouTube homepage because you never know. Okay, it wasn't too bad. But let's see. This will be good. Oh, I have desktop audio all the way up. Okay, let's bump that down a little bit. About there looks like it will be good. Go back. We'll have anything like define in C and C++. I don't want to do purely text-based pre-processing. As much as I've used in the past, I don't think it's a good form of metaprogramming. So either we're going to do like a very good metaprogramming system, or I want to avoid. Yeah. Don't worry, if you hear the sounds of dying children in the background, that is my siblings having fun. At least that's what I think is going on out there. I'm not sure. Basically just structured type-safe grammar replacement. Wait a second. Okay, no. It does make sense for structs. And we're going to say that template structs, templated objects define type patterns. Templated functions can extract those patterns to infer arguments. And I'm going to strike through these because we don't need them at the start. You have good resources to become a Rustacean. There's one YouTube channel that is very good Rust propaganda. It's called No Boilerplate. So if you want to be sold on Rust, go watch his stuff. But for actually learning how to use Rust, I don't know. I just kind of dove right in, and went for it. All right. Show me mod icons. Ban viewerbot. Yes. But to actually become one, I'm not really a tutorial watcher anymore. Yeah, I mostly just pick a project and then Google Vibe my way through it. There is the Rust book. So Rust themselves have the Rust book, so you can learn everything you want through reading this. So this is like the Rust docs are amazing. Some of the best docs. The language itself has a documentation generator built directly into it, and is a very solid documentation generator. I'm probably going to do something similar at some point. But yes, Rust talks very good. A lot of times you don't need to even really read how things work. You just look at how they're defined and you can figure it out. Struct. Are tuples... If you can define... If you can define... type aliases, then traits can become templates, but then that's a type alias that is templated, not the tuple itself. So we're going to say structs and enums and functions. Yes, and they make Obsidian propaganda as well. They make all of the fun propagandas. Okay. So this is all we need for metaprogramming, which, to be honest, looking at it, I remember when I first made Brane Script 4 years ago. The first version of Brane Script was a C clone that had templates. And I'm just thinking back to how hard it was to make template metaprogramming back then. But nowadays, I actually think it's going to be a lot easier for me to code than it was back then, because I'm like scared to put it in templates, but then I'm like, wait a second. Yes, I know, I'm a Notion pleb. It's because I don't want to manually source control my stuff. Notion is very convenient to bring up on any device. Okay. Operators. None. We are going to have no operators to start out. All intrinsic functions. think Obsidian has a first-party service that they sell, but yeah. Right, but then how do I get it on, like, my phone, for instance? Is there an Obsidian app for my phone that would sync up with my custom synced instance? And also then I have to, like, download software to, like, anyways, Notion is very convenient. That's why I use it. Convenience. Not because it's good, but because it's extremely convenient. Which makes it good, because it's convenient. But yeah, operators, none. Eventually, aliases of functions. Then MVP grammar. What grammar constructs? What is every single feature we need in this language to start out? We need all of our different type definitions. So we need a way to we need literals. So literals are like number literals. We need string literals. And then I feel like arrays are an expression. So then we have definitions. So we're yanking like C syntax, basically. Slight bit of Rust syntax, but mostly C syntax. To make it easy on people. To not nuke their brains. Not nuke the brain and their brains. Definitions. We need to be able to define object types. So we have structures and enums. And then functions. Are modules explicitly something we define? And do we have explicit import syntaxes? I think we do have namespaces. So we do have scooping of names. So we have namespaces, import statements, be able to say, hey, put these simples into our current namespace. Like, add them in. So we have our definitions of object types and functions. That it? Okay. And then expressions. And I really like the way Rust works, where everything is an expression, and the things that don't have return values just return nothing. So we'll have expressions and just expressions. But I don't know if we actually want to do that. Because... okay, yeah. We're gonna keep with statements, because those are, on the whole, simpler. Might refactor later. So I'm just like throwing out a ton of stuff to make stuff fancier, and we're making stuff simpler instead. Okay, so we have statements. We need variable definitions. We need actually every statement is just expression and then a semicolon. I'm too lazy. We're just gonna... sometimes expressions return something, sometimes they don't. Okay. Or rather, this is expression semicolon is one type of statement. Let's also have if statements. Let's have while. And then I do want to do for at some point, but then you're correct. We would want to do an iterator object. I'm not doing an elif statement. That is Python cancer. We do have if else, and I'm having that as part of the if statement mentally. Maybe if you use Python and that's the only language. I prefer if else. I prefer writing the word else. It is shorter to write. But I'm like chronically anti-Python. And I love iterators so much. but I'm stopping myself from writing them in the MVP. Iterators will be emergent. And this will be an alias of while. Oh, are we back? Looks like... Okay, we are back. Nice. Okay, I realized I forgot the most important thing, which is the thing that the entire scripting language is kind of based around, which is pipelines. So pipelines are just going to be a list of function definitions for now. And then, yeah, expressions are going to be function calls. Function expressions can be a literal, a function call, which is how we actually do things, a label for another value, or variable. We want to have a reference slash dereference syntax. Sorry. That's actually a good question. I usually think of methods as struct member functions. Like, in my mind, that's what a method is, but I don't know if there's a more specific version. In the association with objects, functions are entities which can exist on their own, but methods are functions which are tied to a class. Yeah. Okay, so reference dereferencing, very important. Member access. So that is expression label, just like that. One thing I'm thinking about is we have pointers, but we also need do we need lambdas? We can create closures as their own type, I guess. Do these need to be... These need to have some representation in the runtime, because we need to be able to define references to them. It is not going to be OOP. There's going to be the syntax of member function calls, but functions are not going to be associated with methods. It's going to be very closer to Rust than C++, but with the syntax of C at the moment. And then I'm also going to say implicit dereference. Rust does not have classes. You don't need classes to program. C doesn't have any classes, they just have structures, and you can't even say which members on those structures are public or private. Like, you just do functions. You code the program. Yeah. So anytime they would do something that would normally be a member function in C++, you have a function, usually with a longer name, and then you pass in a pointer to, usually the object is the first member, first argument of that function. And that's how they do similar things to that. But yeah, no classes. They don't even have resizable vectors in C. Those are things that you basically have to program with functions and then trust people to use correctly. You just have, allocate me exactly this many bytes, computer, please. And then they get exactly that many bytes. Melican free. C++ adds everything, even including booleans, to C. C doesn't have a native boolean type. Booleans are a definition you have to import through a header file. So let's say the classic RPG example. How do you make it as moddable as possible? Oh, C++ doesn't, C isn't caring about mod stuff as much. Well, so here's the thing. That would probably, if they did make that moddable, it'd be through DLLs. And that's like hooking in new functions to your program. And those functions would be called by your program. In Rust, Rust is not very moddable at all. Rust is all entirely statically typed. Or not statically typed, statically linked, is what I meant to say. The way you would do modding is through configuration files and possibly DLL loading. You can add DLL loading back into Rust. But like direct modding, no. Most modding stuff is for engines that use slightly more flexible runtimes like C# or Lua. With this, the programming language itself is dynamically linkable. So yeah. Okay. Oh, like modular. They wouldn't make a character class, they would make a character struct. Which a struct is like grouped variables. Oh wait, are you super functional programming brained? Or object-oriented brained? Are you talking about like make a hierarchy of you have character and then inheritance from character? No. You'd probably make an entity component system or something similar to that. So in C++, struct and classes are the same thing. In other languages, it differs. Classes in C#, classes are by reference types and structures are by value types. In C, you only have structures, and structures have no encapsulation or member functions. they're simply a way to structure your data. That's where the name comes from. It's structured data. Okay, so member access, reference, dereference, a function call, label, variable. Oh, what I need is assignment. So variable assignment. Not a fan of inheritance. I'll use it for lists. I will use one level of inheritance. Anytime I need to put similar things into a list, but not have them all be the exact same thing, then I use inheritance. Though, you've probably never used a discriminated union before, or Rust-style enums. And as soon as you experience Rust-style enums, you're like, never going back. Rust does have something similar to like one level of inheritance, and that's dynamic traits, but we're not worrying about that right now because those would... I do not want to have to implement vtables. Hello, how goes it? Let's see. Yes, you will have to see the Rust propaganda, and then you will see the light. Then again, my brain has just never really worked with inheritance well. It's like, I mean, I kind of see the point of this, but it feels weird, and like I'm writing a ton of boilerplate to add a single variable and single function to all of this. I much prefer interfaces. I love interfaces. But I don't think we're adding interfaces to this. I struggle with JavaScript because JavaScript is not... JavaScript was made to be easy for the people making JavaScript to make JavaScript. It was not made to make anybody else's life easy. See, it's easy to use if you already understand the structure of inheritance. But have you ever gone through like a decompiled binary, jumping through different levels of inheritance just to try to figure out what thing is what? Inheritance is very hard to... It's very hard to understand going into a project. Because you have to map out the entire structure of everything before you can understand anything. I mean, like when you're learning a library, for me, like the way I learn libraries most of the time is before I read documentation, I try to learn them. Usually because documentation sucks and doesn't tell you anything. So I like languages where I can understand everything without it being documented, because most of the time people don't document it well. Alright, I'm talking a ton. Let me continue with this. So we have if statements, we have while statements. We need a switch. What's this lang, and what are you implementing it in? So right now we're designing a as simple as possible scripting language for the game engine I'm building. I have I've been trying to build this thing for like 4 years and keep going too complicated, so this time we're trying to do it as simple as possible. But I'm making a VR first game engine. Yeah. Simple as possible, let's yank C. C is as simple as possible. C is like, if you're compiling down to actual machine code, C is as simple as you're going to get. Aside from like, it's the simplest usable version of something. And even then I'm still adding some stuff on top of it. Oh, you also asked what language I'm implementing it in. We're going to implement it in Rust. Because Rust is amazing. Simple for the user? No. Though, there are plenty of people on Twitter that will attempt to convince you that Rust is simple for the user as well. And to some extent, yes, because you need to learn about 3 things, and then you know how to use C. You need to learn how to call a function, how to create a struct, and how pointers work, and then you can use C. You might need to learn macros too, so maybe like 4 things. With Rust, it tells you all the errors you make magically. With C, it still tells you some of the errors, but usually they're it doesn't give you good explanations of why they are errors until you've used it for a long time, and then you can kind of you can read the cryptic texts. Yeah, with Rust, it tells you every single error magically, which is why I like it. If you can get it to run, it runs. I've had so many first try moments with Rust, and I don't have that with any other language. With Rust, if it compiles, there's a decent chance it's going to work on the first try. With this language we're designing right now, there's going to be debugging. Okay, do I have to do path syntax? Why not just make an interface for your engine? Because it needs to be dynamically loadable into a sandboxed environment. And there's not currently, aside from Wasm, kind of. Wasm doesn't fill my needs, but Wasm is the closest thing to what I need. So the option after that is to make our own thing. Okay. So I'm going to simplify this with a path syntax. So path syntax is what we use for referencing definitions, referencing variables, and referencing. Was the last thing I was thinking of? Object members. So this is how we reference variables. We have a function call, which is how we use them. We can reference and dereference values as needed. Which referencing and dereferencing to some extent is just a metadata thing. Then here's our list of things in our current namespace, labels / variables, literals, and then, okay. We can reference things. We can basically reference anything with a path syntax. We can set it to be a reference, and we can call functions. And we are explicitly ignoring basically all operators except for the reference and dereference. Actually, we really only need reference syntax, technically. Since we don't have, we're not going to have operator overloading for dereference.
At there, as we wait for it. Selected that of like verse. I had my last version of
Brane Script took some information, some inspiration from stuff similar to verse, but there are some things about verse that I'm not as much a fan of. Like they have like this cool like rollback system that is very cool, but like it's being designed by a very passionate functional programming person, and a lot of things yeah, there's a lot of things where they're like, make it easier to use at the expense of performance, and I very much don't like. Let's see, one second, I need to text people. Yeah, just responding to some work-related things. Other work-related things. Okay, and we're back. Okay, so we have the path syntax, which referencing definitions of things, referencing variables, referencing object members, and references create pointers. Ooh, that's a thing where, if I did want to do any sort of affine data types, consuming values through references, it is really hard to do that without also suddenly now you have to do like lifetime tracking and whatnot. So I guess I'm not doing we're not doing affine types. I really like affine type move semantics though. Then again, with the way that we're handling pretty much everything else, memory management, we don't really need to worry about move semantics outside of just the small space of where functions occur. Dang it, I wanted to do affine types. I guess we can't do affine types. I'm just not gonna worry about affine stuff. So we have a literal, label slash variable, function calls, reference, dereference, and path syntax. Do I need literally anything else? Or can we leave it at that? We have assignment. If statements. We have while statements. We have switch statements. Two different switch statements. Switch on int and switch on enum. Okay. Oh, wait. One more thing. So we have string literals, I want to, as a statement, be able to do a slice construction as a statement. So this is a on the stack creation of a slice. And they're like, where do we allocate memory? With intrinsics. So, and that's included in function calls. And there we go. This is... Alright, guys. We're gonna play a game called Compare the Design Documents. So, on the left, we have Brane, the C-like MVP. And on the right, we have Brane Script, the functional programming with dependent types system. Can you spot the difference? Oh, don't tell me that the internet went out again. Network error, can't see stream. Okay, it looks like Twitch is back. Maybe. I don't know, is the bruh for networking or for the difference in the size of design documents? YouTube has no issues? Okay. That's good. It looks like the Twitch stream was bugging out for a little bit, but now it's good. Yes, indeed. I have the sickness, so bear with me. But yes, IRL. You'll actually be a fan of this, Jack. I'm using a MacBook for chat. Unthinkable. Absurd. Well, yeah. But yeah, so you can see, there is you. There's you down there. Avali is better. Avali will be better after I get full face tracking. That will be hype. When I eventually do that. And I stream from Brane instead of VR chat. Then it will be ultra hype. But yeah, I think... Is it that easy? It's that easy. So, do I just jump into coding the language now? Or... What are you doing, Brane, so far? So currently, you can create a static 3D asset, upload that to an asset server, and then download that to a client and see it stream in triangle by triangle. That is the current extent of the capabilities of the engine. Because that streaming architecture is what I'm really focused on. The rest of my time has been spent on trying to get a scripting language working. Okay. So currently we are on the compiler VM branch. Let's change this to git switch create, and then we're gonna call this Brane C. Or let's call it C Brane. Well, today was fixing SteamVR bindings for Unreal Engine. Oh joy. So I'm gonna use OpenXR, which means I believe SteamVR might give you an auto-generated set of bindings, but if I host... It really depends on how SteamVR interacts with OpenXR. Yeah. Okay, so now we start with the runtime is fine. The runtime actually works better now that I'm not doing functional programming style stuff. And we go to both the parser and we don't really need to worry about standard library or types anymore. I'm so proud of some of the type stuff there. It's a good thing that Git exists because I'm not actually deleting it. We're gonna nuke that, we're gonna nuke that. Yeah. Though back in the day when I was doing wirewiz.com, one of my most popular articles was like my SteamVR 2.0 where is it? It was like my binding tutorials, like skeletons. Back in 2019, 6 years ago. Actually, wait, these are time-stamped. When did I put this out? That was 5 years ago. That was over 5 years ago. So I'm familiar with the SteamVR binding system. I was the one teaching it to other people. 5 years ago. Oh. Just make your own controller. Don't tempt me. It's going to happen. It's not only am I going to make my own controller, there's a very decent chance right now. There's a very decent chance right now that there's going to be an entire video series I'm going to be doing in collaboration with some other people, where we make force feedback haptics style interfaces for stuff. Like, And when I say it's a high chance, it's like, we're planning on doing it. So I am going to be making my own controllers, but it's like physics, your hand pushing against things and the things pushing back. Nice. Respect. Lucas is amazing. I feel bad. I asked him to hold me to keeping to having the engine ready for the next reality hack. Well, last reality hack that I completely failed. And now here we are, like 5 months later, and I still don't have it working. We'll have it ready for the next hackathon. Actually, there is a solid chance I'll have it ready for the next hackathon. The perpetual motion machine. It's just computer with brain engine at the top of the hill, gentle slope, wire whiz, and then there's like a wheel, and then there's like slide to sifi deposit wire whiz, walks up the hill, tries to code brain engine. One must imagine wire whiz finishing brain engine. A little bit. Distracting me a little bit. It's fun conversation, though. Okay. We don't even need this macro anymore. That was a good macro. So I'm waiting it to for 5 test versions of Unreal Engine to install. Oh my. That's like Unity. But with Unity, you at least don't have to compile it from source. With Brain Engine, you will have to also compile it from source. But you just do cargo build and it will be done. You don't have to do it for those? Okay, nice. Did you get, like, a binary repo up or something? Vanilla engine binaries? Okay, nice. But they are, like, pre-release. I have, like, a single thing of hair here. I think we should do either full hair or no hair. What's the vote? That hair is still a standout. I think it goes... Perfection. Carno go. Build cargo. Carno. So dumb. But I love the memes so much. Okay. AST. RS. Why do I have an LVM environment? Okay, that's for LVM NVIV. I see you're using NVIM, but not Linux. Yes, this is Windows PowerShell. I may switch to Linux at some point. Why do none of my bindings work? Am I just stuck in this file forever? Wait. There we go. That works. I was getting much more work done off stream. You guys don't want me to do work off stream, do you? Okay, delete macros. And keep the rest of them. Did a little mining off stream. Indeed. So we're gonna say module AST, and this is a public module AST. Unresolved module, can't find file ASTRS. It's right there. Show it, it's right there. Show it, it's right there. It's not there. It does not exist. What are you testing? Then it says it wrote it. Oh wait, this is parser. It is right there. It's a thing. That is why we can't let ourselves go too far down the rabbit hole. That song always gets me. Let's see. Let's switch to different vibe. I did put on repeat, right? Yeah. AST.rs. Harg. Check. Failed to load manifest for dependency Brane C. Oh, okay. I know what's wrong. It's because we're not updating at all, because this requires macros. That's one thing I don't like about Rust, is it isn't quite as tolerant to errors when checking for errors, if that makes sense. What is the file explorer? I think this one is just an NVim tree. I don't think it's anything more fancy than that. I do have my NVim config hosted publicly on my GitHub, so you could just not take my word for it and go check over there. I think I just called it like NVim config. Yeah. Same username everywhere. Okay, so there should be a lot more errors in this file. Oh, wait a second. It's because the parser is reliant upon the compiler to actually run. And with the way that we're formatting it now, it doesn't need to be. So we're going to create a set of data structures that are purely just the syntax of the program in code form. So struct, actually we're going to say enum literal. And I think that's all the literals we need to worry about, basically, ever. Then let's do this. Now I have hair in my eyes for the meme. Okay, we have namespaces. Oh yeah, we should do path statements, which is just path, public, segments, vec, string. And I, in the past, have like made the mistake of like trying to super hyper optimize these structures before. We don't need to do that. I'm going to use the simplest possible representation for all of this to start out. We can optimize it after it's working and we have an engine. And it's actually causing problems for people with how slow it compiles, which I don't see being a problem for a while. To namespaces. I'm gonna say this is not part of the grammar. Namespaces we can do implicit to premature optimization indeed. Namespaces can be file structure dependent. So we have our literals. And then we probably want definitions. Ooh, wait a second. Important thing. We want... Yep, I was just about to get to that. we need to track the sources of things. Since, all right, this version of the language, we don't care about like a node representation or other representations or anything like that. So we will simply have our span be this struct span, and then span is our check isn't working yet, is it? Brane C parser. No, parser is working. Just can't find AST for some reason. There we go. Okay, so we should. Okay, yeah, we're getting error checking in here now. Then we want the one from ops range, I believe. Then we're going to implement Chomsky span or span. Context equals arc string. This equals use size. So when we get context, I guess new return is self. Range and then source source equals context. Self source clone. Self range start. Clone, I believe. Self range and clone. Okay, so we can now use this as a span in our parser. Yeah, we're not gonna really use spanned for. I don't think spanned works for anything other than just like raw tokens, and we're not tokenizing this. We're just going straight for the compile. Because we don't have a token-based metaprogramming system, which is the only reason you need to split that. So now, instead of literal, this is now literal kind, and we need to have a struct literal. Kind is literal kind pub span. And we're gonna have a definition. Def kind. Pub span. Span. I guess I do need... Oh, wait a second. I do need to create an enum for path segments because... Or a structure. Because you can have... Because you can have template definitions. So public label string public template args and yeah, I think I am gonna go option vec, even though this could just be vec and be empty. Actually, it's the same regardless, isn't it? We're just gonna have a unit struct for template arg at the moment. Then we're going to have enum def kind. And what type of definitions do we have? We have object types and functions and pipelines. I forgot pipelines. So we have struct. We have enum, function, pipeline. Do we have tuple? Technically, we need to be able to define tuples. So we'll do tuple there. And all of these need to be public. So now we need to define the definitions for struct, tuple, enum, function, and pipeline. All right, and struct. The structure is going to have a string. Wait a second. This isn't types, so we don't... We don't need to define, what are they called? Tuples. And these definitions will always need labels because we're talking syntactically. Pub label, pub span, and members. Vector, string, then I guess a type. They're gonna say template parameters is vec. Template parameter. And these aren't actually members, these are fields. If we want to be like super technical about it. Then we also have pub template params. And then we have the parameters of the function, which are vec, string, and type. And yeah, I am ordering them Rust mode because we're typing this in Rust. Then span. Okay, so we have the parameters of the function. Then we need the body of the function, which I'm just gonna predefine as a block. Ooh. We need a return type. Okay. Oh, right. Template parameters. Boop. Then, do pipelines have template parameters? The way that I'm currently programming this, which I think I'm going to keep the way that I was doing it before, was that pipelines are what are exported, functions are all statically linked. I think I am going to put template parameters on pipelines, but We're also going to have the ability to export pipelines, and export makes the pipeline public to other modules within the runtime. So, exported pipelines will not be able to be templated. And there'll be an explicit check. Pipelines should most of the time have a return. Actually, it could simply be a blocking process, so they might not return anything. Not gonna worry about that sort of metaprogramming stuff. And then we have stages, which... Do I want to have to manually define these? Not really. So we're gonna have a public enum pipeline stage, and this may be a path to another function or a pipeline, and then there's a lot of things that this path could be that we could make valid. Mostly just functions for now. I don't know that I want to support any of that yet, so right now I'm just gonna be block Okay, so that leaves us to define two different things, which are... I mean, we need to define template parameters as well, but we need to define types and blocks. Let's define block underneath function pub block struct block. Okay, so here's where we just do expression. As an expression, a slice construction. So we're just going to say slice. And then this is a vector of expression. Then we want also in sign. Span expression. Wait a second, assignment. Assignment or variable definition? That's a little bit fuzzy. Slice assignment. I'm going to say variable definition, where this is a type, and then a label. Assignment. We're going to have an if statement. And this if statement is going to be comprised of an expression as a condition, and then a box statement as the body of the if statement, and an option for the result, or the else block. I kind of want switch statements to be an expression. We'll keep it like this for now. Simplicity. And then we're going to have a vec of the case is going to be case kind, and we're going to say int okay, it would actually be really fun if you could just have case kinds be literals. Like that. But no, right now it's just int I 128. Because for some things it would have to be like a giant if-else block secretly behind the scenes, and I don't want to give the impression that it's faster than it is. Alright, and that is everything we need for that. I'm gonna put expressions up here. Wait a second. Did I do statement yeah. Okay. Delete all the spans out of here. So what sort of expressions do we have? We have, of course, literal. Then we don't have labels or variables, we have just a path. And path serves all of our variable referencing needs. Then we have a call where we have an we want it to be a path or an expression. Do we have function pointers? That's the thing that I keep waffling on. Okay, yes, I am defining that function pointers are a thing. We can call function pointers. I'm gonna lock it in. We can call function pointers. Okay, so we call an expression vec expression. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. This is the expression that we're calling, and these are the arguments. And usually, this will be a path. Almost always it will be a path, but since it can be a value, it might be a value. Okay, and since we could have an expression be the qualifier for a path, we do need a field expression. To access the fields of an expression. That is something we need. Okay. We don't even have indexing operators because no operators, it would just be a function. I don't even think we need deref, to be completely honest, but it's there just in case. I don't think it's going to do anything. We're just going to use field reference for everything. Okay. And finally, the last thing we need to define is types. So what types of types can there be? There are native types. Native types. And I'm just going to list all of them out right. Yes. Yeah, we'll keep them in order. 16, I32, not 23, 32, I64, U8, U16, U32, U64, F32, F64. Do I want to allow for 16-bit floating point? I don't know. If somebody really wants it, sure. And I eventually do want to add vector types. Vector types would be pretty slick. I'm gonna add Boolean to the list of native types. Not native vectors, but native slices. That's what this is. Native vectors don't exist on the hardware side. Unless you count Riak. So slices are behind the scenes secretly a struct that contains a pointer to a block of memory and then the size, like the count of how many objects are in there. So instead of like a C-style array, it's a C-style array plus a size data. So instead of having to do the usual C-string thing, where you iterate down to the end of whatever, you just get like the, yeah. We have our native types. We need a... I don't want to do function or pipeline pointers yet. I'll need them very soon, but I don't need them yet. I'm going to say pointer. Do I care about mutability right now? One of my friends got their engine to work with OpenXR. Nice. Pointer with the optionally typed pointer. Do we care about mutability of pointers right now? Nope. I would love to do mutability guards on stuff. Actually, because of how the runtime works, the runtime itself can enforce immutability on stuff, meaning... Oh, there's a lot of other people making VR engines, and you get to know them if you make a VR engine. What are a few notable ones? So the most notable project similar to mine, notice I didn't say engine, is Basis, which is built on top of Unity, and that's another, like, not necessarily VR chat competitor, but like a VR chat replacement potential. They're a framework, not a platform. So you can pull that in and like make a VR chat clone, basically. There's Nexus. I don't know what they're doing. Malik, if you're in stream chat, what are you guys doing? He occasionally pops in. What are you doing? And Overtay, loosely, that's another one. Godot sort of kind of counts. I know some people trying to do stuff with Godot and like Matrix and whatnot. And then I know a couple of people who don't necessarily have names for the engine. They aren't too popular about it. The guy that I was just talking to there is working on the Geodesy engine, I think is what he calls it. And then for type, we do need to do... we do need to be able to do equality for types. Ooh, that's a thing. We don't want to compare spans when comparing equality. Wait a second. This is grammar. We don't care. We will create our own type, kind, for the actual compiler. I'm not sure if my project will succeed. I hope it will. I think if I achieve my goals, it will. If I achieve all of my goals, it will just blow everything else out of the water by just the nature of its existence. Sure, Resonite is better. VR chat yet it only has 200 concurrent play. Resonite's current performance is actually like pretty bad. I tried out the platform recently and I was pretty disappointed. Like functionality wise, it's amazing, but it does sacrifice a lot for that. Now, they recently completed a upgrade to a new C# version, I think it was. So that probably helped out a bit. I'm not even talking about loading times. I'm talking about like once you're in the experience itself, the performance is pretty bad. Your chat already has all the player pace in VR. Is it even possible to make people want to pivot? The VR chat community is fickle. I just need to wait for one controversy to happen. I just have to wait for one controversy to happen, and then people will try other stuff out. And if something is markedly better, they'll probably stick with it. But the problem is, like, VR chat is currently the best platform out there, like, objectively. If you like boil it down to like which one is the easiest for people to get into, which one is the easiest for people to produce worlds for, it wins on a lot of easiness metrics. Considering Resonite includes about the actual business side in the recap, feels more long-term stable than VR chat. Yes, Resonite is currently the best financially, currently. They're the only, to my knowledge, profitable VR platform, and that includes, like, Horizons. They do military contracts. Also, like, other contracts, but it's mostly through private contracts that they make money. It's not off the user. It's not off the user base. E. Bool, char. String. Yeah, and then there's like the Scion trigger stuff semi-recently too, and I don't know. It's people like getting mad at VR chat, even though, yeah, it's debatable whether VR chat deserves. Actually, usually VR chat does not deserve the hate they get from the community. Like objectively, usually they don't. Will you allow user-made plugins or mods? Yes. And how will you prevent crashers? So you prevent crashers by with a couple different things. My main one is to allow you to locally limit how much of somebody's avatar you see. So I'll have to look more into how to do that shader side. Like, how do you limit like a geometry shader spawning too much stuff? But basically, like if somebody's textures are too large, you can like get a downgraded version of those. Not VR chat security, more so like setting performance limits. The way that VR chat crashers work is exploiting some chink in the system to allow them to require significantly more computer resources than your computer has, and a lot of what my engine is going to be doing is actively monitoring how much resources are being used, whether that be network latency, GPU bandwidth, GPU like communication bandwidth, all of that stuff. And the idea is that like it scales the performance of the engine to the performance of your computer dynamically at runtime. That's the goal that I'm aiming for. And I'm hoping that if I get that detailed enough, like if a crasher avatar pops up, even if it like tanks a couple of frames, pretty quickly it'll go like, oh, the VRAM is overtaxed, or oh, I guess it would be like, is the VRAM overtaxed? Is the frame times too long? And then it's like, okay, downgrade this to a simpler version, or just like completely like throw a source error model there and be like, yeah, overtaxed. Just having a very smart engine is my goal for that. An engine that is aware that it's working with user-generated content constantly. Okay, and then path takes care of template arguments. Do I want to do I do want to do tuple here. And we also want to be able to do an anonymous structure. So this will be string for each one of these structures fields. So I don't think it's even the cost of the render. I think it's VRAM, maybe? I'm not sure. But I think it might even need to be some level of like pre-checks for things. Like before you tell the GPU to load all that memory, you need to check if it can handle that much memory. And I don't know, I feel like it's probably exploiting bugs in Unity and not VRChat itself, which, like, at that point, which type of bug are you exploiting? Are Unity bugs VRChat bugs? Or are they just Unity bugs? Then do I want specific slice lengths? Don't think so. It is probably Unity limitations. They've gotten better at it. But if it being able to set world area of a world to only have certain avatar rules could include ones related to performance. Yes. I know, like, VRChat, I basically had it confirmed to me that it is a cultural reason that they don't let you nerf avatar performance as part of, like, a world's settings. But, like, every single VRChat club goes, please use this type of avatar. This avatar performance or worse, or better. This type of avatar performance or better. And it's just kind of like, let people enforce that at the technological level. Like, if they're having to pay people to do that, it's a lacking. It means people are using the platform that way, and you should let them do that in a way to, like, not need to pay people to do that. That's kind of ludicrous. You could even set it up so it's like a per instance thing where, like, the instance master can toggle that setting at live and, like, give people permissions. There's so many different things you could do to make that system better, and it's crazy to me that they don't. Okay, structures, tupicles, discriminated unions. I think I'm not doing anonymous enums, so that will be handled by paths. It's not necessarily flawed as much as it's underdeveloped. No more valid diagnostics to move to. All right. Unless I'm hallucinating, I believe. Oh wait, template parameters and template arguments. So template parameters, I believe these are just going to be string for now. And template arguments for now are just going to be types. Now, sometimes you want constants in there, but for the moment, we're just going to constrain it to only be types, and that will be fairly easy to deal with. We have an AST, so I'm going to git commit this as Ah, right. So I do want to keep this. So we're going to okay, so that branch is now pushed up. Next thing we're going to do is make the parser read this. Which I'm about to go run for some food. So I might do a little bit of off-stream mining. And just get that parser working. Then oh, this is gonna be so easy to code. You might wake up to a ping from me tomorrow that's just like, hey guys, it's working. Alright. Well, I'm gonna go run for food. Thank you guys for sticking around if you did, and I will see you